Chapter 207 to 208. Ray sat alone in the dining room of the mansion, enjoying early breakfast after Ringo decided to cheer his night up after their little conversation about the Mizukage thing. Naturally, that meant May decided to join up, and one thing led to another. Hence, Ray needed a very big breakfast to get back his energy, and due to his schedule as the leader of his own hidden village, he was too used to waking up early to sleep in with the girls who were still deep in their dreams, snugly hugging each other's naked form under the sheets. As Ray was eating his scrambled eggs, suddenly Ao sat opposite him, putting a plate with buttered bread and some kind of fish on the table. Ray looked at him with a raised eyebrow, silently asking Ao what he wanted with his eyes. "I came to talk," Ao gruffly said, making Ray roll his eyes. "No shit, Sherlock." He mentally grumbled, but outwardly he simply sighed and continued eating. There was no harm in letting Ao talk, and Ray had to admit he was quite interested in what the big bad rogue hunter wanted with the albeit smaller but certainly badder rogue ninja. "I had a very long night." Ao slowly started with an expression that showed how unsure of what to say he was, and Ray barely restrained a snort. "Yeah, me too, buddy. I doubt our reason for staying up late was the same, though." Ray mirthfully quipped, but Ao simply ignored the jab. "You see, I was always the guy sent to clean up disloyal pieces of shit like you," Ao indifferently stated. "Find, kill, get rid of the body. That was my job, and I was good at it. And now here I am, calmly talking with a person who could easily be at the top of my kill list. Funny, isn't it?" "You mean the fact you think you got a chance?" "Yeah, it sure is." Ray nonchalantly shrugged. Ao simply sighed in defeat. It was obvious to the man how uncomfortable he was with the current situation. It must be quite hard for someone like Ao to stomach not only hiring Kirigakure's rogue ninjas for help, but also deciding to make one of them the next Mizukage. Ray mentally summed up, "The meeting yesterday, it got me thinking," Ao said in frustration as his shoulders sagged, but his eyes didn't stop giving Ray a piercing, intense stare even for a second. "I am no politician. I am a hunter ninja. I spend most of my life hunting and know the worth of power. I know exactly what you aim for with making Ringo into a Mizukage." "Oh?" Ray playfully hummed. Honestly, the second Ao started showing his feelings openly, Ray knew there is no need to worry about him despite the man clearly hating his situation. If he was really hostile, he would be all cold and glaring. Ray really didn't feel any need to hide his plan from the man the second he showed his frustration openly. It meant he made a decision. Ray had no idea what kind of decision, but it was certainly interesting. Then again, it was not like the clan heads would renege on the contract. It was too good for them to do that. "I may not care for it, but I know how the game is played," Ao started, pulling Ray out of his thoughts. "But it appears that yesterday I was the only one who realized you do not exactly play the same game as the clan heads." Ray slightly leaned forward with a disarming smile, supporting his chin with his hands, and listened. "It's sad, isn't it?" Ao bitterly frowned. Before Ray could react, however, he continued. "But I can understand it. The politics of Kirigakure were always corrupted. After so many generations of it, it is no wonder the clan heads simply don't get it." You will have to enlighten me, Ao. I never cared for Kirigakure's politics, and definitely never got involved in them despite living in the village for over a decade in the past," Ray said, subtly reminding Ao that he was once Kirigakure's ninja and that he defected. For some reason, Ray really couldn't help himself. He liked the conflicted look in Ao's eyes every time it was brought up. "Right," Ao commented quietly but with a lot of sarcasm. "If you had no idea, you wouldn't try to exploit the clan head's ignorance," Ao added, hating how smug Ray looked. Suddenly, he gained a sad look. "It's really vexing, you know. The clan heads are supposed to know better, but I am not surprised. With the formation of hidden villages, the clan heads became more of political animals, rather than people understanding the importance of pure strength. The heirs to the clans are mostly trained to quickly get jonin rank, getting so much preferential treatment it is not even funny. They no longer put as much importance on personal power as they do on politics. After all, S-rank ninja who normally could not be defeated by them are but a small annoyance once they use politics to make him a public enemy number one. That's why your plan is going to work. Yeah, I always found it funny how the clan kids like to intrude on the academy graduation day, coming there already blooded, trained, and ready to kill while competing against scared kiddies with subpar training compared to them. But I digress. It's all for the prestige of their clan, no? Ray added, causing Ao to wince. I always hated when the clan kids decided to participate in the academy graduation ceremony. Then again, that's one of the reasons why I am fine with what you are doing. Ao explained, and Ray lifted his eyebrow again. What do you mean? Ray's demeanor shifted. You know, Ao's expression bitterly scrunched. I always found it wasteful to kill off at the very least 50% of the graduating class. So much talent wasted. So many late bloomers killed. And for what? Sure, Kirigakure was raising Jonin-level ninjas quickly and efficiently, but our numbers were always lower compared to other villages of the Big Fire. That's also the reason why we are regarded as the weakest of the five, despite our numerous advantages. Take Suna, for example. They have a cold war between the daimyo and the KasiCair going on. The daimyo has had them under an embargo for years now, and yet Kirigakure can still not measure up to Suna. It's pathetic. Ao looked straight at Ray. Simply put, I am sick of it. Kirigakure needs a change. That's why I betrayed my own village and everything I ever believed in by joining the rebellion. Not because of the clans. These self-important pricks can burn for all I care, especially after selling the village to you without even realizing it. No. What I want is a better Kirigakure. Ao stopped and took a deep breath, as if he was about to make a life-changing announcement. That's why I want you to know that no matter how much I hate your traitorous ass, I am willing to work with you as long as you make Kirigakure into a better place. Saying his piece, Ao stood up and went away while Ray amusedly watched him. In short, Ringo is his best shot at Kirigakure being improved after the Civil War, huh? Looks like the 5th Mizukage will have her faithful secretary after all. Who knew? Good for Ringo, at least she will have a person who can fill the paperwork for her. Why exactly are we here? Ao asked, as he looked around the lavish meeting room in the castle of the Water Daimyo. The civil war in the Land of Water was still in its starting phase, and so far probing attacks was all both sides were willing to use. Thanks to that, Ray didn't have to worry about large-scale battles erupting anytime soon. Hence, he and his girls had time to make and enact a good plan. We are here to meet with the Water Daimyo, duh, Ray nonchalantly replied, causing Ao to scowl. Obviously. He quietly grumbled and gave up on getting a proper answer. Ray was already working with resistance for a month, and Ao quickly learned that if Ray didn't want to reveal something, it was useless trying to figure it out. Ray, on the other hand, was also fed up with the resistance, or rather, with their leaders. They wanted him to win a war for them, and so this last month Ray threw idea after idea on them, only to have each one rejected. He couldn't just go to Kirigakure and openly deal with Yagura because the clan heads didn't want collateral damage. He couldn't have Yagura secretly assassinated because apparently the clans wanted it known it was the resistance who was behind the deed. He couldn't simply defeat the Kiri ninjas in outposts across the country in order to diminish the Kirigakure's forces and draw Yagura out because the clan heads didn't want the number of Kirigakure's ninjas to be too small once they took over the village. He couldn't do this nor that. Honestly, after the past month, Ray was considering Mei's idea of going for an indiscriminate rampage and destroying both the resistance and Kirigakure alike. If only Kirigakure wasn't in such a good strategic position, only frequent visits to his wives and their foxes in his dimension, alongside occasional checkups on his village, made Ray calm enough to not go nuts. Plus, he had to admit that Pakura did a marvelous job of running the village in his absence. There's an idea. Ray hummed before the memories of the past month made him broody again. There were so many ways to win the civil war fast and somewhat cleanly, but every single one of them needed some form of sacrifice the clan heads were unwilling to make. With the amount of rejected proposals, Ray quickly began to see that this job would take years if he did things according to the wishes of the clan heads. Years he was unwilling to put into the job. Needless to say, Ray quickly put his foot down and threatened to simply scrap the contract. Sure, the current opportunity to install Ringo as the fifth Mizukage was almost irresistible, but it was not worth years of their effort. Not by a long shot. At worst, Rei could go back home and pull together another scheme to make Ringo into the Mizukage. Fortunately for both Rei and the clan heads, a new contract was signed after a practically loud argument. Well, there might have been one or two threats of joining the Kirigakure side if they pissed him off too much. Anyway, this time the clan head stipulated that as long as Rei gets rid of Yagura without unnecessary bloodshed. Somehow, Rei didn't believe the old geezers yet realized they were at war, and without collateral damage to the village, its forces and its outposts, he was free to do his job, as he deemed right without the clan heads having any say in it. They basically asked him to win the war without doing any damage. Frankly, even the ever-serious Ao facepalmed after reading the new contract. For Rei, it was all fine though. He only wanted freedom of action. As for their complaints at a later time, who cared? For this clause to be added, the clan heads in return asked for a massive monetary reimbursement in case Rei decided to abandon the contract. Yet again, Ao actually dropped his head on the table with a thud and groaned in disbelief in front of every clan head, while Rei signed it with a bit too amused smile. He simply wondered how they would even go about demanding the payment from him, if it came to that. Really. And so, this was where the situation led them. Straight into the Water Daimyo Castle, a place where Rei could finally start his plan of winning the ever-annoying civil war. The Fatas is really taking his sweet time, Mei mumbled, not liking having to wait for the daimyo who she was sure was making them wait only to feed his ego. That's why I signaled Ringo to retrieve him, Rei light-heartedly said, while shrugging amusedly, which caused Ao to snap into attention as his eyes instantly widened in pure horror and started hurriedly looking around the room for any sign of Ringo. He was too distracted to notice her leaving the room, but now that Rei informed him, he could only fight back a forming headache as he imagined Ringo manhandling Daimyo into the room. And surely enough. "Unhand me! Do you know who I am, woman? No, don't put my smelly sock into my puff." Ao whimpered when he recognized the terrified voice of the Water Daimyo and saw the door to the meeting room open with a bang, while Ringo dragged the plump, wriggling man by his right ankle while his hands were tied together on his chest and his mouth was stuffed by a sock. Then suddenly, the daimyo's head impacted the doorframe with a loud bang, causing a whimper to leave the plump man's lips as he instantly quieted down, while his tied arms shot to his head. "Here you go. 1 water daimyo delivered," Ringo indifferently stated as he lifted the man up by the scruff of his robes and sat him up behind the head of the table, ignoring his tearing-up expression. She then proceeded to dutifully stand behind Rei, giving the sitting Mei a small whack to the back of her head to make her put her feet down from the table. "Be more respectful to the daimyo, Mei," she reproached, earning herself a deadpan stare from the younger woman, Ao, and even the daimyo himself, who still had the sock stuffed in his mouth. Realizing the situation, Ao quickly stood up and pulled the sock out of the man's mouth and untied his hands. Surprisingly enough, the water daimyo didn't dare to open his mouth again, and Rei alongside Mei were greatly amused at how he was shooting Ringo unsure and terrified glances. "Yeah, so, as you probably already heard from your servants, I am Rei," Rei started talking, pointing at himself before snapping his thumb at Mei. "That is Mei, and the woman who dragged you in is Ringo. The dude to your right who is shooting you worried and mothering glances is not important." Rei nodded towards Ao, who gave him a brief stink-eye before his gaze returned back towards the daimyo. Seeing the daimyo unsurely nod at him, Rei mentally grinned. There is no better way to shut these self-important pricks up than a healthy dose of fear. He glanced at Ringo with the corner of his eye, well aware that she most likely swiftly took down every guard she encountered while dragging the daimyo towards the meeting room. After all, there was a reason why they were not interrupted by hordes of guards by now. And I gotta admit, Ringo learned quite well how to threaten somebody without even saying anything. "We are here to request you putting a trading embargo on Kirigakure." Rei smiled at the water daimyo, whose eyes bulged at the request. Next to the daimyo, Ao's jaw dropped. This was the first time he was hearing about it, and sure, he knew it would be a very effective strategy, since, unlike Konohagakure, Kirigakure was not all that self-sufficient, but he also knew the daimyo would never do this. Rei could as well ask the daimyo to slit his own throat and be done with it. I can't do that. As predicted by Ao, the daimyo shrieked in fear after hearing Rei's proclamation, "They will kill me." Rei lifted an eyebrow at that and looked at Mei, who looked at him with the same half-confused, half-deadpan way, before both turned back towards the daimyo in a very effective but also creepy way. "Right." Rei slowly nodded. "Let me rephrase that." He paused, and Mei snapped her fingers, causing the daimyo to quickly start choking on the air and gnawing at his throat. "The Kirigakure ninjas are not here. We are." And at that moment, Ao had to take a step back when he saw the completely disregarding way Rei and Mei smiled at the daimyo, while Ringo simply indifferently stared at the ruler of the land of water. "This is utter madness,"